So picture this. After a brutal 6-week war, one where the US and Israel seemingly took out Iran's entire leadership, all the key players are suddenly gathered around a negotiating table in Islamabad. And on the surface, this is all about peace. But, what's happening behind the handshakes and the photo ops, that's a whole other story. The real game is just getting started. Yeah, you heard that right. This is not a peace talk. Think of it more like a high-stakes auction for the future of the Middle East, where the price of admission is control over the world's oil supply. So everything you're seeing on the news, it's pretty much a cover for the real war being fought behind those closed doors. Okay, so to really get what's going on here, we have to start with what each side says they want. And, well, you're going to see in a second why a simple compromise is, let's just say, not on the menu.
Look at this. This isn't a negotiation. It's a standoff, plain and simple. The U.S. wants total capitulation. Iran wants total recognition and for all sanctions to be lifted. These aren't starting points for a deal, folks. They're basically declarations from two different planets. They're just fundamentally, completely irreconcilable.
So that's the big question, right? If they're this far apart, why even bother showing up? Well, the answer has absolutely nothing to do with diplomacy. It has everything to do with a weapon that has brought the entire global economy to its knees. Here's the real reason they're at the table. Iran has slammed the door shut on the Strait of Hormuz, the most critical oil choke point in the world. The war isn't about missiles anymore. It's an economic war fought with oil tankers and barrel prices. And this number right here, it tells you everything you need to know. Right now, 230 massive oil tankers are just stuck. They're loaded up, sitting in the Persian Gulf with absolutely nowhere to go. This isn't some line on a chart. It's a physical blockade of the world's energy artery. And the fallout from this? It's just staggering. We are talking about 10 million barrels of oil a day, just gone, poof, vanished from the market. That's a fifth of the entire planet's oil supply. Is it any wonder oil prices have skyrocketed to $150 a barrel? Not at all. And look, don't just take my word for it. The Dallas Fed is calling this, and I quote, the largest disruption to world energy supply in the history of the world oil market, ever. This makes the infamous oil crisis of 1973 look like a minor speed bump. But here's the scary part. This isn't just about gas prices. That's straight. It's a lifeline for so much more. Think food, think agriculture. We're seeing Gulf nations literally facing a grocery supply emergency. A third of the entire world's fertilizer trade is just stuck. And you know what that means, right? Your grocery bill is about to go way, way up. So what we have is a food crisis wrapped inside an energy crisis, and the whole thing is threatening to push the global economy right off a cliff. So while Washington and Tehran are basically locked in this economic deathmatch, there are other players, shadow players, if you will, who are operating behind the scenes. And for them, this crisis is a massive, massive opportunity. Let's start with Pakistan. Their role as the mediator here was absolutely no accident. This was a diplomatic masterstroke. They didn't just offer up a conference room. No, they spent weeks methodically building this position, doing shuttle diplomacy, hosting summits, meeting with the Saudis, all of it leveraging their unique position, bordering Iran but allied with Saudi Arabia. They didn't just stumble into this role. They engineered it, step by step. Then you've got China, who is using this whole mess to literally rewrite the rules of global finance. Look at this table. What they're doing is building a whole parallel system for buying oil. Instead of the US dollar, they're using the Chinese renminbi. Instead of the SWIFT system, they're using their own, called SIPs. This isn't just about getting a discount on oil. This is a massive strategic play to create an off-ramp from the US dollar's dominance in the global economy. And then, of course, there's Russia. Maybe the one player who wins no matter how this thing ends. For the Kremlin, this level of chaos is, frankly, a golden opportunity, both for their bank accounts and for their strategic goals. I mean, Russia's game plan here is a masterclass in profiting from chaos. First, let's talk money. These sky-high oil prices, they could dump an extra $150 billion into Russia's treasury. And second, the strategic angle. A battered, isolated Iran becomes way more dependent on Moscow for weapons, for support, for everything. For Russia, this isn't a crisis. It's the perfect storm. But for all the international scheming, the most shocking part of this whole story might actually be what's happening inside the American delegation. There's a massive conflict of interest at play here that threatens to blow the whole thing up from the inside. You know something's up when even a Republican senator, Tom Tillis, is publicly saying that having Jared Kushner lead these talks just doesn't make any sense. This isn't about party politics. It's a really basic question of credibility.
And this right here lays it out in the plainest, starkest terms possible. On one side of the ledger, you have Jared Kushner's official job, negotiate a deal with Iran on behalf of the United States. And on the other side, his private paycheck. He's collecting millions of dollars in fees from Saudi Arabia, Iran's #1 rival. So the question is, how can you possibly be an honest broker when your own wallet is being filled by the other side's biggest enemy?
Okay, so when you zoom out from all these individual players and their backroom deals, what this whole crisis really shows us is something much bigger. It reveals a fundamental shift in the very rules of power in our world. History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. And we have seen echoes of this story before. Think about the impossible demands at the Paris Peace Conference after World War I, or the secret back-channel deals at the Geneva Conference in the 50s. And, of course, the huge economic shockwave of the 1973 oil embargo. What's happening in Islamabad today? It's like all of those historical moments got rolled into one giant high-stakes crisis. And that brings us to what might be the single most important lesson from all of this. The U.S. launched this devastating military strike, right? A so-called decapitation. And yet, just 6 weeks later, it's America that's been forced to the negotiating table. Why? It's because Iran holds the ultimate economic weapon. They have their hand on the world's oil spigot. The lesson here is crystal clear. Military power without economic leverage is basically a wasting asset. And this all points to a concept that's becoming more and more important: choke point politics. It's the strategy that says, in a world this connected, controlling a narrow little strip of water can give you more power than a massive army. If you control the choke point, you control the whole conversation. So all of this leaves us with a really critical question as we look to the future. We've just seen how the ability to cause enough economic pain can bring even the world's mightiest military to the table. So in this new era, who holds the real power? Is it the nation with the biggest army, or the one that controls the narrowest strait?